It's TK Friday, and today on The Joy of Editing, I'll be doing another full edit. I'm entitling this one Mountain View. Stay tuned. Hello everyone, and welcome to The Joy of Editing with Dave Kelly. It is TK Friday again, my favorite day of the week. Today I have this image. I'm calling it Mountain View. This image comes to us from Larry Anderson. Thank you, Larry, for the use of your image. And as always, you can download the image and the PDF notes. You'll find Dropbox links in the description below this video. Click on More to open up that description and just scroll down through there. You'll find the image and the PDF notes Dropbox links. If you have an image you'd like me to edit on a TK Friday, scroll down further in the description and you're going to find a Contact Me. Click on that. You can contact me and we can discuss doing one of your images on a TK Friday. By the way, there's a launch sale going on right now at the TK web store. You'll get 25% off of everything if you use my promo code DK15. It normally gets you 15% off, but during the month of February in 2024, you'll get 25% off your entire purchase. And when you use my code, you're supporting The Joy of Editing with Dave Kelly. And this launch sale centers around Sean Bagshaw's new Iceland Highlands complete workflow video. You get over 3 hours of instruction. I highly recommend it. And if you don't yet own the TK9 plugin for Photoshop, now's a good time to pick it up and save 25% off. Well, let's get started. As always, I start out in Lightroom, and I like to start out with a linear profile because I like a nice flat image going into Photoshop. I couldn't find one for this camera, so I'm using an Adobe Neutral profile. It's going to get me close enough. It's still going to give me a pretty flat image. If you don't have a linear profile for your camera, there's a link in the description below. You can get a free linear profile for your camera from the TK web store. After adding the profile, my next step is to click on Auto, and then I look at the histogram. If my white is clipping or my blacks are clipping, I'll adjust the white and black point and do any little touch-ups here I need. And then, as far as detail is concerned, on this image, it was shot at ISO 100. I saw a little bit of noise up there in the sky, so I just used the Enhance feature in Lightroom. Did a really nice job removing the noise, and no sharpening on this. And the other thing I did was lens corrections. I always check on remove chromatic aberrations and enable profile corrections. And then lastly, I did a crop on this image, and there you can see my crop. And now at this point, I would just right click on the image, go to Edit In, and click on Edit in Photoshop 2024, but I'm already there. And here we are in Photoshop. Now I did notice the image was a little on the soft side, so I did send it into Topaz Photo AI and just did a little bit of sharpening. When you get your image, it'll look just like this. Today we're working on this landscape image, and whenever I do that, I like to do a balance and contrast adjustment on the foreground as well as the sky. So what I'll need to do is save out a foreground selection and a sky selection as channels because we'll be using those for the opening balance and contrast adjustments. All we need to do is on a Mac, hold down your Command key, a PC or Control key, hold that key down and click on the sky button on the combo or CX panel, and that saves you out a sky channel. And then hold that Command or Control down again and double click sky, and that'll invert it and save you out a foreground channel just like that. Pretty easy. Now to make the foreground and sky adjustments, I'm going to use a color grading tool as I always do. So what we're going to do is come up and click on your luminosity mask button. I'm going to use a Midtones 3, so I'm going to click on Midtones 3 just because I want to protect the shadows and the highlights from clipping when I use my color grading tool to make the adjustments. And now all we need to do is output that to a color grading tool. That's this button right here, so give it a click, and there it is. There's a Midtones 3 on that. Now I need a foreground and a sky. This will be the foreground. And now what I can do is click this button and duplicate that, and that'll be for my sky. And then we'll come back and make this layer, which I'm going to use for the foreground, active. Now, these are color grading layers, but really what they are is curves adjustments, but we're going to use this color grading panel to do the adjustments. But the color grading tool makes it really easy to adjust shadows, midtones, and highlights. In other words, how light or dark they are, as well as color grade them with this wheel. The next thing I need to do is prepare this color grading layer for the foreground. So to do that, we're going to use the layer mask calculator. You'll find it on the combo or CX panel. Now here's a little tip. Hold your command or control key down and click on this button. This will keep the mask calculator open until you click the X to close it, because we're going to be using it for this layer as well as this layer. Now the first thing we want to do, we're going to work with the foreground. So we're going to click on foreground. And as you can see, I have a MIDS 3 mask on this layer. So what I need to do is get this foreground and intersect it into that mask. And to do that, just click on the X. And now you'll notice we have midtones 3 inside of the foreground, and the sky is dropped out. I just noticed we're not seeing the entire image, but we can take care of that with the TK9 CX or combo panel. Right now, you can see my actions are open here. I'm going to click X to close them. And you see this button right here? If you click it, you'll fit the image to this area right here. So now we're seeing the entire image. Now we can make some adjustments. I'll start out with midtones. So I'm going to click on the midtone button, and I want to lighten up those midtones. When you drag this slider, you don't see anything happening till you release the left click of your mouse, and then you'll see a change. I just want it a little bit lighter, so I'll take it right there to 17. I also want to color grade the midtones, make them a little bit warmer, but not yet. I'm going to go and click on my shadow button first and adjust shadows. I want to darken up the shadows to somewhere like right about here, a -30. And now we're going to click on the highlight button, and I just want to open up those highlights to right here, a 43. And see how those highlights lighten up in this area of the mountain? And now let's go back and click on the midtone button, and we'll do a little color grading. Now with the color grading tool, you see my cursor, the point of the arrow. Anywhere you click, you're going to drop a point. You see that? You got that circle. And that's the center of it right there. And so if I click here, it'll go more on the red side. It'll be less red if I come into here. It'll be more dramatic if we come out to the edges, but you can click on any color you want. But I want mine to be warmed up a little bit, maybe somewhere right around in that area right there. Now I'm just going to look at my note. I'm going to click this field right here and highlight it. And I'll grab the hexadecimal number off my notes and get the exact number I had. And I'll type it in, and that was 8B8275. And then you need to click this button to accept that. And it drops that color grade right there. So now if I shut this layer off, here is before and here is after. Next, we're going to work on the sky, so we'll click on this layer and make it active. And now we need to prepare it for the sky. Now we come back to the layer mask calculator, click on sky to make it active, and now we're going to click X again to intersect, and now the sky is intersected with the MIDS 3 mask. I'm not going to color grade the sky, but just adjust the values of the shadows, midtones, and highlights. So we'll start out with midtones, click the midtone button, and what I want to do is darken up the midtones a little bit. And we're going to take those over to right there, a -22. And now let's click on the highlight button. And I want to open up the highlights a little bit to like a +28. And now let's click on the shadow button. And watch the top of the sky here as I start to adjust this to the left to darken the shadows. I'm going to take it to the left, over to right here. I didn't release the left click, but watch that top area of the image. I released the click. See, it got a little bit darker. Now, if we come to this layer and we'll shut it off, here's the before and here's the after. And now the overall before and after, if I click my before after button on my CX panel, we started out here and we end up here. So we're off to a really nice start, I think. I don't need the layer mask calculator right now, so I'm going to click the X to close it to get my combo panel buttons back up. On my CX panel, I'll click my TK action button because I always like to keep these actions open for whenever I need to use one. The next thing I want to do is burn some of the shadow areas in the foreground here just to bring a lot of character out in this image. I'll be doing this freehand, but I'll be using the help of Edit Blend If to help me. This is a super cool technique. So what we're going to do is click on either the combo or CX panel, the burn tool. Now you have two sides. You have a gray side and a transparent side. I'm going to use the gray side. You can use either side. It doesn't really matter. And the next thing I want to do is use Edit Blend If. And right now my color grading tool is in the way, so we can click X. Nothing changes on my color grading layers. We'll click this Edit Blend If button. Now I'm starting out very broad with a Darks 1. So we'll click this button. This is Darks 1. And you'll see me, I'll work around later with these different buttons. But for now, we're going to not think about that. We're just going to do some freehand burning. Now I have a burn tool. And I'm going to start out with like 10%. I'm going to type my 1 key. It's basically a black brush. and it's got a nice soft edge on it. It doesn't matter all that much because I'll be using Edit Blend Diff to really help me here. So it's only targeting the dark one areas, okay? So that's a pretty broad area. So I'll just start painting, okay? So I'm looking for dark areas, and I'm just painting over. Now remember, every time I lift my brush and then paint over that area again, I'll be adding more darkening. So I'm painting, lifting. Again, when you see me go again across the same area, I have lifted the brush. Okay, so I'm at 10%, and I'm going to come over in here. Now that darks one, it's a pretty broad area. I'm going to be painting up in here too, but like right in here, if I go out into the sky, I don't really care so much because I can drop that sky out later. Now I'm going to type my 3 key and go up to 30% opacity. I'll make my brush a little bit larger, and I can paint some of these areas down in here. I'm not going to paint the whole thing in front of you in video here because I think I would bore you, okay? But I'm just looking for dark areas. But I'll show you how I fine-tune this at the end. So I'll continue to paint here, and then I'm going to pause the video and I'll get back to you. But I'll be increasing and decreasing my brush size. Like up in here I decrease and I'll paint on some of these areas, and here you see that. But I'll just continue to paint over here. And the nice thing about like freehand burning or dodging is it lets you decide how much darkening you want on certain areas, and it gives you a lot of artistic license, which I love it. And don't be afraid of this freehand stuff, because Edit Blend Diff will really help you and help you to get really great results. So I'm going to pause right now and finish this off, and I'll get right back to you. And I am back. Now, for my Edit Blend Diff, I'm still on Darks 1, so let me show you how I can fine-tune this. First off, let me shut this layer off. Here is my before, and here is my after. That's on a Darks 1. Now, if I Option or Alt-click on this layer, you can see how sloppy and ugly my mess is, right? I created a nice piece of abstract art there. So I'm going to hit my Option or Alt key and click this button again and go back to the image. Now I want you to notice something else. Again, I'm on Darks 1, right? If I shut off Edit Blend Diff by unchecking gray, you can see how ugly of a job I've done. You see that? Pretty horrible, right? But when I turn Edit Blend Diff back on for Darks 1, look how it all tightens up, and it looks really nice. And I could be satisfied with this, but I have choices here. That's Darks 1. Now we could limit it to just Darks 2. See how everything gets tightened up? And now we can go to Darks 3, and things get tightened up even more. So let me shut this layer off with Darks 3. Here's before, and here is after. If I wanted a little bit stronger, I could come to Darks 2. Okay, in my notes I had Darks 3, but maybe I wasn't as aggressive here, so I think I'm going to go to Darks 2. But you experiment with the different dark values. So again, let me shut this off. Here's before, and here is after. Now it's got up into the sky there a little bit, so all we need to do is click on our Layer Mask Calculator button on the Combo or CX panel, click on sky, and click minus to subtract the sky, and we clean up all the edges if we went over there. So that's pretty cool, right? And now you notice I have a layer mask here, only letting the foreground show through, not the sky. Now, as I study the image, I'd like to bring out a little bit of detail, mainly up in this mountain area here and less down here, but I want to bring detail only out in the foreground, not in the sky. So here's what we can do. We can get a TK action. If your actions aren't open, hit your TK button. But look for the clarity action, which is right here. Give that a click. And then you can adjust the radius amount of the pixels. This amount gives you more of a sharpening effect, but I'm just going to take it up a little bit to 16.2 because I basically just want to sharpen that area, and I'll click OK. Now right now that's on the entire image. So what I'm going to do is click this button on the combo panel to put a black hide all mask on here. And then I'm going to grab a white brush. So I'll click this white brush button, and I want to go to 100% opacity. I'll type my 0 key. And what I want to do is with a nice big brush, now I'm going to make my image a little bit smaller by clicking this minus button here a couple times, which will make it easier to paint. And I want to change my brush size and make it pretty large here with 100% opacity. And what I'm going to do now is just paint on that detail adjustment, but mainly up here in the mountain, right like this. It's got a nice soft edge on it. Now I'm going to cut it down to 50%, so I'll type my 5 key. And then on this entire area here, I'll just put 50% I'll just keep painting across here, just like so. All just with paint, very simple and easy to do. If we look at my mask right now, if I click this button, you can see there's my mask right there. I know the mask is a mess and we're up into the sky, but have no fear, we can use a mask calculator. Let me click this button again, we can see our image back. And now we can click on our layer mask calculator, and now click on sky, and click minus to subtract the sky, and it takes it out of the sky, just like that. And now let's click this button to see my mask again. Now it looks like that. I'll go ahead and click this button so I can fit the image to screen. But now as I study this image, these areas are a little bit too light, but we can fix that with Edit Blend If on this layer. And right now my Edit Blend If is open. Let me click X to close it. If yours isn't open, just click the Edit Blend If button. And now we can try this. Let's click on No Lights 1. That doesn't help too much. Let me go to No Lights 2. I'm just looking at these light areas. I don't want them to be as light. Let's go to No Lights 2. That tones them down a little bit. But here's what I can do. I can also adjust these sliders, and here's a little trick. On either one of these sliders here, if you hold your Command or Control key down and drag a slider, these will both go together for shadows or highlights. In my case, I'm on highlights. So I'm going to go with this slider right here. It doesn't matter which one you get. Hold your Command or Control key down. And through experimentation, you see that number 155, 235. I ended up dragging this to the left until those numbers read 125, 205. And then release the left click of your mouse, and there you go right there. And now look at this area right here. I'm going to uncheck the gray, which will shut Edit Blend If off. See how that's a little bit lighter? You might have to really study it closely. Now let me turn Edit Blend If back on. See how it just toned down these light areas? So that really was helpful to me. I love Edit Blend If, and if you love Edit Blend If, let me know in the comments section below. Now to get this number 125, 205, I kept experimenting till I got this to look the way I wanted it. But now if you'll notice right here, you see this bar right across here? This area right here, from here over to here, this is not getting the clarity adjustment in those light areas, and that's why this tones down. Only these areas are getting that clarity adjustment, and it really graduates off beautifully right through here, and that's because these sliders are split. I'll go ahead and close Edit Blend If by clicking the X. Nothing changes here. I want to add a little bit of a mid-tone contrast increase. I really like mid-tone contrast. So to do that, we're going to click on the Luminosity Mask button. I'm going to go for a Midtones 2. And there you can see the mask right there. I'm going to output it to a curves adjustment layer, and very simply on the presets, click the drop down right here and go for a strong contrast, RGB, right there. And now let me shut this off. Here's before and here's after. So I get a little bit of color pop, a lot of contrast increase only in the midtones, but I think it's too strong. I'm going to click right here, and I'll just start to pull it back. And I decided on right here at like 70%. So let me shut this off. Here's before the midtone contrast, here's after. And I think that really helps. And now it's time for a TK action. If your actions aren't open, click on your TK button on your combo or CX panel. I'm going for soft pop, so we'll click on soft pop. All right, now that's really strong. Now, here's a little tip for you. If you come up to the multi-mask panel and click on this button, we can go into Edit Layer Mask mode. And I like this because I can experiment. I could see what's this look like on Darks 1. So I'll click this button. That's what it looks like on Darks 1 or Darks 2. You can experiment. You can see what it looks like on midtones, like there's midtones 1, midtones 2, a stronger effect, midtones 3, even stronger. And then you could try it on lights. So here's lights 1. And you know what? I liked it on lights 1. We could try lights 2. But this gives you some experimentation that you can do. And you know what? On my notes I have lights 1, but here I think I might like lights 2. So let me shut this off. Here's before and here is after. So before and after. On my notes I used lights 1 and pulled the opacity back to 70%. But here I think I'm getting the same effect by going with lights 2 and leaving this at 100%. So let's go with that. I no longer need the Adjust Layer Mask panel, so we'll click the X. And now we're back to the Multi-Mask panel. Next up, how about a basic vignette? So on the TK Actions, I'll click on the Vignette button, and I'll take the Gaussian blur just the way it is. I always do. Click OK. Now I want to keep it out of the very light lights and the darkest shadows, and I also want to increase the amount to 50%. So let's drag this up to 50%. And we'll shut this off. This is before and this is after. And I know it looks really strong, but we're going to use some Edit Blend If. So we'll click on the Edit Blend If button. We're going to protect the lightest lights by clicking either No Lights 1. Let's click on No Lights 1. Not getting much of an effect there. Let's go with No Lights 2. That's protecting these light clouds up in here, so that's good. Now, you can only use a No Lights or a No Darks. You can't have both, but you can if you follow my little tip here. So if I click No Darks 1, that's what it looks like a No Darks 1. Here's what it looks like a No Darks 2, and that's what I want. But if I come here and click on either one of these buttons, we can see what the amounts are. See 20 and 100. All right, so what I'll do is click on No Lights 2 because I know I want that. And now here I can take this bottom slider and drag it over to 20 right there. And I can take the top slider and drag it over to 100, which is right there. So I have actually now a No Lights 2 and a No Darks 2. And now if I shut this eye off, here's the before and here's the after. And now that vignette doesn't look too strong. We're protecting the lightest lights and the darkest darks. Now here's a little tip. See all these slider circles? If you left click and hold on any one of these circles, you can read these values. So right there you can see 20 and 100. That's a No Darks 2. And on the right side you can see 155 and 235, which is a No Lights 2. So you could jot those values down, and now you know what the values are for No Darks 2 and No Lights 2. Now I'll click this X to close the Edit Blend If panel. Nothing changes, but I don't need it right now. But I do need the multi-mask panel because I want to make an exposure adjustment, and so we're going to click this button right here, and there's our exposure adjustment layer. I'm going to click on this field right here to make it active. Hold my Shift key down, and we'll go up by 1/10 of a stop if I hold the Shift and click the up arrows. Here we go. Here's 1/10 of a stop. I'll click it again. I'm still holding the Shift key down. 2/10, again 3/10, 4, and 5. So I'm increasing the exposure by a half a stop, but it's affecting the really light lights too much, but we can handle that with Edit Blend If. So we'll click on the Edit Blend If button, and I'm working with lights. I don't want it in my lightest lights. So let's try No Lights 1. So we'll click on No Lights 1, tones it down a little bit. Here's No Lights 2. That's better, but I want it a little bit stronger, so here's what I'm going to do. And I experimented here by holding my Command or Control key down. Remember, when you do that and click on either one of these circles, these two will come together, or move together, I should say. So I started to drag this over. You know, I went over to about here, and I thought, it's okay, it's getting better. But I kept working with this, experimenting, till I got over here to right there, 130. So now, look at this light area in here, and I'm going to shut off Edit Blend If by unchecking the gray box. So right there, that's before. You see how light that is? And now here's after. See how it toned that all down? So I've been able to increase the exposure, but keep it off the very light lights. And that would be like this area right in here. It's not being affected. Now, don't forget about this button right here, the double arrow magenta button. If I click it, you can see the areas that are not magenta or the areas that are not getting the adjustment. So I could have made the adjustment like this with the overlay on, so I could see the actual areas I'm targeting. Or if you shut it off, if you like to work visually, then just make the adjustment and see what the change is in real time. And now as I study the image, I look down here at the bottom, and some of these little rocks down here are too light, and this whole area down in here is a little light. So we can burn that area down a little bit just to darken it up a bit. So I'll use a zone mask for that, but right now my Edit Blend If panel's in the way, so click the X. And again, nothing changes down here. Let's click on the Zone Mask button, and let's click on this rock like right about here. And there's that tone. Click OK. And you see the lighter areas will be the areas being targeted. And I'll just lighten that up a little bit, like maybe to right there. And we're going to output that to a burn tool. So here's your burn tool. It has two sides again. The left side's 50% gray. The right side is transparent. Either side works, but I like to use the left side. So I'm going to click on the left side here, and now I'll be burning through a selection. So I'm going to drop my brush opacity down to about 10%. So I'll type my 1 key, and then I'll make my brush a little bit smaller. I have a nice soft edge, and I'll just start painting. Now remember, when I paint once, it applies the burning. When I lift and paint again, it adds more to the effect. So I'm just going to look for light areas. So I'm lifting several times here. I'm going to come over in here, and I'll continue to paint these areas in here. I went ahead and sped the video up so we don't take too much time here, but I'm just looking for the light areas and I'm painting away. And now I've made my brush smaller and increased my opacity to 100%, and I'm just trying to hit these little rocks. And every now and then I go too far and I go to a gray brush to erase. The gray brush is really nice because you can erase with it. But I'll just continue to paint here a little bit more and see how I'm just toning that all down. And I think that's going to be good. And remember this, if you go to a gray brush, don't forget, if you want to start burning again, to go to a black brush, because that's the brush you'll be using to burn. Okay, so now let's shut this layer off. Here's before, and now here's after. But you see how it tones this area down right here. Now our eye is not going to that as much. Because again, if I shut this layer off, see how our eye wants to come down in this area? And now let me turn the layer back on. But now you see our eye wants to come up into this mountain area, which is really what I want you to see. Now also notice I do have a selection here, so let me go ahead and shut my selection off by clicking this button on the combo panel. When I get near the end of an edit, I always like to try out the color luminosity action. You'll find it in your TK actions. If your actions aren't open, click your TK button, click on Color Loom. It's a black and white adjustment layer in the luminosity blend mode, but it's set up when you shut it off. You don't see a change in your image because Tony adjusted this so there wouldn't be a change. So now we can work with the lightness and darkness of the different colors. So I'll start out with red. And what I want to do is darken up my reds to somewhere right about there. Let me shut this layer off. Here's before and here's after. See how the reds got darker? And now I want to slightly darken up my yellows. Not much, just a little bit, to somewhere like right around there, like a 81. And the last one, I want to adjust the last color, that is blues. I just want to lighten up the blues just a little wee bit. And we'll take this blue slider and drag it to the right to right there, 30. So now let's check it out. Here is the before. I'm going to shut the layer off. There's the before and there's the after. But I really like that result. I think that really helps. And one final adjustment, and that is working with the colors. If I have any oversaturated colors, I want to pull those back. And the best way to handle that is to come up to the Saturation Vibrance Mask button and give it a click. We defaulted Saturation 1. Now the light areas represent the color that is mostly saturated. Now I'll click on Saturation 2 and you can see that I will not be getting a strong enough adjustment there. I like what Saturation 1 was giving me. And we'll output this to a hue saturation adjustment layer. And all I want to do under Master is just take the overall saturation. Now it's only targeting the very saturated colors, okay? So we're going to pull that back. So I'm going to drag this to the left. Even if I take it the whole way off, see, it won't get rid of all the color, but I'm going to go to right here, a -20. So check it out. This will be minimal, but I'm going to shut this layer off. Here's before and here's after. Just tone those colors back a little bit. Now, if I shut this mask off by clicking the X, you can see that's a pretty strong adjustment, but now when I turn the mask back on, it's only targeting, like I said, the very saturated colors. And this does conclude this edit, but let's see where we started out. I'm going to use my before after button on my combo panel. So here is before. We started out here and now we end up here, and I really like it. Well, there it is. Another TK Friday comes to an end, and I hope you enjoyed today's full edit. If you did, please give it a like, share it with your friends, and if you're not yet a subscriber to my channel, please subscribe. Click that bell notification icon. Click all so that you'll receive all notifications, and then every time I upload a new tutorial, you'll get notified about it. I want to thank each and every one of you for joining me today on The Joy of Editing with Dave Kelly, and I will see you all right here next time. But until then, happy editing.